people come from all walks of life. They all have lives they lead. Any and all are welcome here to come and chat with me.
Hello, everyone. Well, I don't know what the weather is like where you are, but it started off being sunny. Of course, this is not going to air today, so I have no idea what it's going to be like by the time it airs. But anyway, welcome to the show. I'm very happy to introduce my guest. She is a published author, Mary Pichette. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you, Nancy.
You're welcome. So tell me about your book.
Well, I was part of a launch of a series of books by Women of Worth, WOW authors. And my book is called Passion and Persistence. And it's stories of women who took bad situations in their life, fairly negative, heavy duty, often experienced as children, some as adults. And how did that particular event or those events steer you in a direction that opened doors as an entrepreneur? Or how did you use those events so that they became something that led you to a particular profession? Most of it was about, businesses and stories of how it led us to open businesses.
So how did you come to get involved with that group of authors?
Well, there were two things that happened simultaneously, actually. As they say, there is no such thing as a coincidence. I had been working with Julie Salisbury of Influence Publishing, and I had met her by attending a community event many, many years ago, hosted by WOW. They would have regular community events, just educational seminars, which we used to attend, and now we go to on Zoom, like your small talk. And at the same time, the founder of Women of Worth, WOW, Christine Arwam, she was looking to launch books. So she had done the first book and it was received very, very well. Friend of mine was in it. Now I had referred that friend. She said, what do you think? Have you ever heard of these people? And I knew Influence Publishing. And I said, well, I've always had good experiences at the WOW events. So she went and was part of the very first book, had a very good experience. I intended the launch. So I said, well, what am I doing? When they announced the second book, of course I'm going to, and it was something that fit. I mean, every book that's been written, there's 13 in the series now, has a different theme. Like, so during the pandemic, they published a book on surviving the pandemic. And I believe, I should probably have them all here so I can reference them, but it was set up as for, surviving the pandemic as a woman. So whether it was, and so much of it involved, looking after your family while running your business from home, or bringing your job home, and the schools were closed. So that became it. And the book after that was about, there's many, 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 I'm just referencing the most recent two, was on post-traumatic stress disorder and how it's affected women's lives.
Right. Wow. So now you said the name of your book. Do you have a copy there? I should have asked ahead of time for you to be able to show everybody your book.
I actually have one behind me. Shall I just pick it up?
Please. Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm sorry. I should have had that prepared. Never too late though. So and I know that you studied literature in Quebec at Trois-Rivières University. Should say that with a French accent. Université du Québec at Trois-Rivières.
I'm going to have to go upstairs, so I'll be right back.
Well, no, let's wait till a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. A little bit. So now I know you also. I was just saying to the audience that you studied literature at the Université. I should say that with a French accent. My accent's so bad these days because I've been away from Quebec so long. But the University of Trois-Rivières, right? Then you also went to the University of Victoria. And, I love this. You studied criminology and law at Simon Fraser University.
Yes.
Right? Wow.
Yes, I did.
And you went to St. Anne's Academy?
Yes.
So now, okay, where do we start now? I don't even know where to start. The academy first, is that where you went first? Is that like a high
It was
school?
a girls' boarding school in Victoria.
Okay,
And so I mean, it was a day school and a boarding school run by the Sisters of St. Anne, who ran residential schools. They ran the residential school in Kamloops and also the Mission Residential School. So I had no idea of this at the time, but called it a boarding school. And it was within that system. And the women that attended, the girls that attended from First Nations communities, were generally the daughters of chiefs and princesses in the system. And so it had sort of a status. I mean, it was still part of what we didn't know what we didn't know.
right, yes.
So, you know, I believe the school is closed now. It's there as a heritage site in Victoria.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, it not even realizing the system that we were a part of, but when I played basketball and everything we did was within the residential school system. I mean, the teams we played against were all the, you know, Cooper Island,
Right.
St. Mary's and Mission and Kamloops and, you know, and so be it. So, but it was, you know, a so-called private Catholic school.
Right.
And that was it.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So for you personally, was it a good experience?
I never fit into the traditional system. So
Okay.
yeah, I was very, very fortunate that I was in that system, because if I had been in any other system, I would have been probably in something like called jail or juvenile detention centers.
Okay.
I had tremendous rage and difficulty at school. And my giftedness has been in the area of my intelligence. And so from about, and to your audience, I just wish to identify this actually humbly, is that I was smarter than my teachers from about grade 4 on. I've had all the tests, so I had them when I was little, and I was quite bright. So not only did I have some challenges and events growing up as a child, then I was really super smart and probably would have had an ADD label on me. So I bounced around the classroom like a ping pong ball, but I was so smart. You know, I always knew all the answers and was always putting my hand up. And to this day, you know, talked out loud a lot. I think it's probably quite a challenge to manage in the classroom. When I go to events as an adult now, I mean, we haven't been, it doesn't seem to happen so much on Zoom, but I sit at the back, whatever the event is, I'll take a chair at the back. And sometimes I go with friends or whatever, and I always laugh. I said, you know, you got to be careful sitting next to me, because I move around, I bounce, I, you know, stand up, I leave, I come back, I talk, I whisper. I mean, I self-manage these behaviors, but sometimes they just get the better of me.
Right.
So, you know, I mean, I in hindsight, I was grateful for that particular school experience, because it was only girls at the school. It was confined, it was small. And I had two in particular teachers that recognized both my intelligence, the giftedness of it, and that there was something else going on. I mean, this was also in the 60s, right? The early 60s. And so, you know, when I was taken out of the classroom and put in closets, I had one teacher that, you know, agreed to teach me for a year. I couldn't go in the classroom for a year because of some things I had done.
Okay.
And then in another event, they just took me out and one of my teachers was a professor at UVic at the time, and they just sent me to university. I was in grade 11.
Right.
And I actually did. And I mean, those are, you know, the word I would use today is miraculous. rather than, like I said, in any other system, I
Yeah.
wouldn't have finished school and I probably would have ended up somewhere else.
Well, let's face it, like schools, I don't know about today, because I went to school like 50s and 60s. They were for the average person. If you were slow or if you were especially smart, you did not fit in.
No.
Or if you had any kind of
And
emotional problems or whatever, right?
and the whole system to this day, educational system, is set up, first of all, hierarchically. So it's very set up from the top down. It's an authoritarian system.
Right.
These are changing. There's a curriculum that's as old as a dinosaur. We should be teaching coding to children starting in kindergarten, and most schools aren't even teaching it. You can take it as electives in grade 11 and 12.
Right.
I mean, we can go on and on. Our educational system, and I say that with the highest regard for teachers. And I say that, with my hands on my heart and my head bowed to teachers for what they had to go through in the pandemic and are probably still going through. I don't have young children at home anymore.
Right.
So the brokenness of it, is representative. As we've gained more knowledge about all things, that too is changing. There's been many, many changes in the system over the years, schools without walls and chairs in circles. And, there are very many. So it's an adapting system, and, but it is not, it's very, very middle of the road. But you can't go into a classroom now. Teachers are, and this is what we discovered when the pandemic hit, teachers are social workers. It's where we send our hungry children, our children stricken with poverty. It's where we send our children in the throes of PTSD. And we send them with learning disabilities, and we send them with physical disabilities and mental health, not just mental health challenges, but maybe limited intelligence. And teachers have this classroom of children, 30, most of whom need specialists.
Yeah.
Like, I can only say God bless them, because the rest of the children are slowly being removed and put into private schools. And where the resources are, that, we move them to private schools.
Right.
So, there's a really, there's a terrific division that's just growing every year in the system. So.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. Yeah. All right, let's move on now. What did you study at the University of Victoria?
When I was there, I was in political science, and then I moved into law. That they opened their law school while I was there, and the first year of law school students were in their fourth year of political science. We were selected and applied in opening the law school, which now in Victoria is quite highly regarded, but in the very first year, it was like, we'll take this consortium of students. And what we did in our first year of law school, we received our fourth year of political science credits, and then moved on through the law school.
Right. Yeah. Now tell me about, because you were former executive director at Servant, is it French word, Servant Anonymous Society? What is that?
Yes.
I haven't heard of it.
Well, we were a society that, when I came into the society, it was about 4 years old, and we provided services to young women that were being human trafficked and had been rescued, or women that were sexually exploited.
Oh my goodness.
We had homes for them, safe homes, where they could come and live up to 7 years.
Right.
But the crux of our system, our beliefs around that, was when you educate a woman, you change a generation. We also believe that in order to successfully exit exploitation, because exploitation is about economics and power and control, you have to provide alternatives. So we had a college that the women would get up from the houses and come every day to school and get their grade 12. And then we worked with local colleges so that they could then enter college, but mostly we did adult education through that. So we had your reading, writing, arithmetic curriculum, and then we had relational management and life skills, and then we had relapse prevention classes. So and the women could stay at the houses for up to 7 years. Now, no one did, but we were
Yeah.
not a 30-day wonder house,
Right.
and refused government funding, because government funding comes with quotas and outcomes.
Yeah.
And they would ask us, I had many meetings, that can't come and, well, said, no, like, you've got to give me 1 year with each person that comes in. Well, they'd knock it down to 6 months and think, by the time we got to the signing of the contract, they'd knocked it down yet again to 3 months. And I walked away, and after a while, I just wouldn't even engage, because that becomes the dominant directive of your programming, where the money comes from. So all of the money we raised and funded ourselves was done privately. So yeah, that's what we did. And yeah, we were very effective. We won some very, very significant awards for our work.
So how long were you with them?
I was with them for over 15 years. It was, I mean, I've always had a business on the side, self-employed.
Right.
That was the last position I held as a job, where somebody paid me every 2 weeks. And then I went into full-time consulting and self-directed employment.
Oh, all right, great. So now, okay, so now you've written this book. You were talking about that as a part of this of a series of books with this group of people. Have you written other books?
No, I'm in the very close to the finishing stages of the next book, which is mine. And this week launched the book of a very, very dear friend, cheering her on and being on the sidelines of her book. It's been a tremendous experience, and boy, finally got me to get going with dotting my I's and crossing my T's for that final process.
Very good. Yeah. I've interviewed a number of authors, and I'm always amazed, that because it does, like, as far as I can tell, it does take a certain amount of discipline.
Yes.
To get put whatever it is, whatever kind of book it is, right, on paper.
Yes.
And get that out there. So applaud you for doing that. That's really great.
Yeah.
So do you have any other plans for more in the future? Like, what are your plans? What do you have any goals at the moment? I'm sure you always have some kind of goals, but I'm pretty sure that's your nature.
Yeah, it is. It is. I mean, other than writing my book, I have business goals that I work on, month to month, week to week, and year to year. So I hold out visions for things I still would like to accomplish in my day-to-day living. And, like everybody, I'd like to resume some traveling that I had underway prior to 2020. And and one of those that I'll resume is going back to France. I love it there, and I'd like to stay there for I was there for a month last time. I'd like to, 3 weeks. So yeah, and I'd like to be there for 3 months. And so taking those journeys, I'll call them, as I'm not a real vacationer.
Right.
And but so setting up some things like that. That one's in process. It's just stopped. And I'm not one of these people that's keen to get on the first airplane that leaves the ground. It's a whole bunch of nuisance. I have done a little bit of traveling just locally,
Right.
like in North America, and for business purposes. And it's not easy.
Well,
flights get canceled, and it's very, very costly, and things like that.
Absolutely. Yeah. I traveled with my sister. We don't vacation. We travel to experience, my son lives in China.
Exactly.
So we've been.
Where does your son live?
In China. So we've been to China and absolutely loved it. Then he worked in Indonesia for a year. So we went there, so it's just to experience what goes on, or what the atmosphere of that country, as much as you can see, right?
Yeah.
I've never just gone to vacation to lay on the beach.
Yeah, exactly. And there's so I'm very hopeful. I think that with the shifting and changing sands underfoot,
Yeah.
travel may yet be something that's still a ways out. And not just because of the pandemic and the regulations, but now, war in the Ukraine and what that can mean, because my preferred travel destination was Europe.
Right.
So I think that travel is on there, and if it's not travel there, then I do have an ambition to rent an RV, or I don't know, buy one temporarily. Haven't done any rest, and go across Canada. I've seen most of Canada, but I have not seen Newfoundland. So that and or PEI. These are the only two provinces I haven't visited. And so that would be my other travel destination. I think sooner than later.
Right. Yeah, that would be nice. Just how long would it take you to go get your book? Is it?
Oh, 30 seconds.
Okay, you go ahead then, and I'm just going to talk to the audience because I really want to see.
All right.
Okay, so I just find it very, very interesting that some of the things that Mary has done, and she talked about, having as a child, having all of this energy in regular classroom. And I know schools have changed. I understand that. Some of the changes I don't quite understand. Like I know kids are not taught how to hold a pen or a pencil, at least doesn't appear to be. I don't think spelling counts. So like that would have been great for me because I was never a great speller. Still not. I loved spell check, by the way. And of course, spell check only works if you can start off with the first couple of letters of the word, Oh, there you're back. That's great. That didn't take long at all. Okay, so
finish what you're doing. I'll listen in.
I was just talking, about the schools, like when I could never spell, and I loved English composition, but I would lose marks constantly because of my spelling. And the more I tried to spell a word, the more confused I got. Now just talking about spell check. Spell check will only work when you have the first couple of letters right. That's what my experience.
Yep. And it has some funny corrections too that can, drive you crazy for sure. Yeah. I think the great feature now for writers in any context, blogging or writing your book, or, is you just, the speaking systems that we have built right into our computers. I talk mine, and then, and with, as my computer, this one I'm currently have is considerably upgraded from the last one I used, and it captures it all, and then go back and edit and that. But yeah, so
yeah,
I just sit and talk into my computer, which is, it's, so you're having I'm having a conversation with myself, but as I write. Yeah.
So, okay, so you got your book, you want to hold it up and
yes,
show everybody so they can see it. Okay, so Women of Worth, Power, Passion, and Purpose. All right, 15, and oh, wow, empowered entrepreneurs. Okay, so where can people buy the book?
Well, I have it on my website.
Okay.
marypichette.com. You can purchase it directly through there. Okay. And it's much less expensive than Amazon, no shipping and handling. So it's there. And I'll just show, not that, but just to give a sense, because perhaps some of your listeners are thinking themselves of wanting to write. And this is the Women of Worth series is outstanding because so many women, there's a process that Christine has developed, connecting women to women, and writing. It's a very, very good way to launch yourself as an author and have the whole experience of doing the writing, having the editing, getting all your social media lined up, T's crossed, I's dotted, but then also going through that whole process of publishing and launching a book.
Right.
For 1 week, you'll do nothing but scroll and reply and send out stuff. And that I found that process, obviously the writing process and the publishing is, very, very significant.
Right. Yeah.
Editing, rewriting, but then that launch in that publishing, that's a whole, in this day and age, process of its own. And lining up interviews and getting out there and, being participant in that So I just want to really encourage your listeners, for anyone that's doing that, if they would like to get a hold of Christine. And so if you want to get a hold of me, marypichette.com. But for Christine, I would look up, wow, but it's very the woman of worth. Because when you look up women of worth, you're going to get a Revlon or a makeup site, but it's got the women of worth in it. And it seems I can't lay my hand on that. So I would say, yeah. And there's 2 books a year. And so you make a contribution, you know, like you pay the way you pay to publish a book. I mean, publishing books can be expensive. And that's another thing. This doesn't involve the expense of going out doing your own book. If you're doing your own book, you're starting at about a $10,000 price point.
Right.
You get from writing, coaching, publishing, you know, the cover done, the editing. Somebody's got to print the pages, put them all together, and then mail the books out, right? Sell them.
Yeah.
You sell them, people sell them. So that usually starts at around 10,000, where something, you know, by doing your own book, you participate in a process, and therefore the cost becomes much, much more affordable as well.
Right.
Yeah.
So I did find a www.womanofworth.com. I'm not sure if that's it or not.
Okay.
There's lots of, when I put the woman of worth, it just sort of, my search engine went to its own place. You know what I mean?
Okay. Yeah.
So, but anyway,
Well,
people,
I
it's
can-
out there. So for people just to have to do a little.
Yeah, and
right?
it's yeah, and it's through that, and I mean, I'm not trying to minimize it. Christine, her last name is spelled A-W-R-A-N-M, like Mary, and
AWRAM.
A-W-R-A-M. Yeah, so it's Laura. You'll get to L'Oreal with just Women of Worth, and
Oh, I saw that on my search engine. Yeah.
yeah, that's the one that comes up.
Right.
I guess, oh, here we are, Women of Worth book. No, that's, so
Yeah.
Women of Worth, you'll have to do a bit of digging, since I didn't come prepared with that, but it's you'll see it, and you'll see, you know, this
Yes.
a book, or, you know, they're you know, these are just, you know, this is sort of you're looking at a typical format, you know, the colored blocks
Okay.
and the names of the book, but Woman of Worth is on each one, and then like one is, and it's women empowering women, and then the different ones: power, passion, purpose, balanced, brave, bodacious, tribe, trust, and team. So each one has a real theme to it. But my encouragement around that is just, it's a fantastic way for a woman to tell her story, be guided in that process. Because one of the other things when you're writing about your life's journey, my life's journey involves some pretty significant trauma. And so every once in a while I'm working in a chapter, and my PTSD gets triggered, and I can say those words, but it'll take me, you know, 4 or 5 days of not sleeping, and some nightmares come back, and I go, oh yeah,
Right.
oops. And then I do what I need to do to put my brain back on track.
Right.
So that's what PTSD is. It's about your brain.
Yes.
And I've very fortunately have learned that, as opposed to it's about your character,
Right.
or your weaknesses. So I've been able to, you know, not with that knowledge of my brain, and the workshops I do online around that PTSD recovery for women is a lot of very pragmatic and practical things about PTSD is happening in this part of your brain, the primitive, we call it the primitive part of your brain, which is locking up. It's right at the base of your skull, the base of your brain. So all the information has to throw, every bit of information coming out of your brain to the rest of your body has one neural pathway to get out. And that's through the primitive brain and into your spinal column. So it's pretty, that's why PTSD mucks you up so much, because that little bit of passageway is frozen, or the trauma will create something else. You got to move that up. The front of your brain is where you have resourceful thinking, and your limbic system with your feelings are in here and that. So a lot of my work is, well, how do I get, very pragmatically, how do I get my brain from here when it gets frozen? And that's why the nightmares come in, because it's sort of like doing this, and it can't get out. And how do you get your brain from here to here so you can get resourceful? And the physiology of, and there's a great deal of acknowledgement around post-traumatic stress as very, or post-traumatic disorder, very much physiologically. But my work in that area has come from years ago. I didn't get the label. There was no information out about it. I heard some seminars, or I read a book, and I was like, oh, that's me. And so, but I used to speak in conjunction with my work with SAS. We did a lot of work in trauma recovery. Again, a lot of this before it was on everybody's lips like it is now. And I would speak, but one of my common factors was, look, the whole system of PTSD or PTSI injury was set up for males coming out of the military or first responders. So it works with the male brain. It works with male attitudes. And one of the things that is most disconcerting is some of the very original treatments. I realize they've changed, all of you in the listening in, experts in the field, particularly those of you in the psychiatric or medical profession. I get it. The very foundational core, however, still has great influence. And that was, we call it desensitization to the event. So you relive the event and you desensitize it and you bring it into reality. And I used to ask the question, which event of trauma, rape, abuse, violence in the home do you want that woman to relive? Women do not experience trauma as a one-time event. Yes, military soldiers, and okay, let's just allow that is. But this idea that you desensitize to the event is not female experience. And so this idea that somehow, you take this bad event and you soften it, it didn't fit with women's world, women's life experiences. The second thing is that men respond to trauma differently than women. And so they externalize and go shooting everybody. I mean, very generalized. Whereas women internalize. And, but we still see a far, far higher rate of suicide amongst male trauma survivors, although female trauma survivors, it's one of the things that's brought attention to women's trauma, is increasing. So we've had a lot of work to do in that area, because the systems and therefore the foundational beliefs and assumptions about the treatment in PTSD has been very geared to singular experiences. And I mean, I was booed out of talks because I would dare stand up in rooms with military, largely men. There was occasionally a woman there, and dare say, talk about PTSD in women's lives, and dare say that they hadn't gone to war, or, and therefore, how can you know? I mean, I dealt with that a great deal. This is 25 years ago. So in this world of PTSD, like you said, it's growing. We have many other treatment modalities that we're using now. I think for women, there's still a necessity to, and a lot of women have to do it as self-directed. There's not a big military machine or a first responders machine out there supporting them. And so much of our trauma has been around not only the physical experience, but not being believed, being re-shamed, re-traumatized, and so hiding it and silencing. So I always said women were forced to silence their trauma. All trauma was silenced until, the late 90s, but ours continues to be that way. And, and time again, well, if you weren't in war. And ironically, as there's more funding put into PTSD, it's coming more and more for first responders and for military, and military is now pre-testing and getting, we now inoculate you for trauma. But the more we hear about that, and those are excellent tools, but it raises the value and significance of male trauma from war. or male trauma from being heroes, police heroes or fireman heroes.
Right.
So, that we've still got a ways to go, but my work is around helping women get to some of those very practical ways, like moving it, recognizing when it's happening, moving it from here to here, dealing with the limbic system. I mean, one of my pieces is just, this is what a brain looks like, and now we're going to stop and draw it. It's very, very easy to draw a brain, but see, I can see my hand. If you put me in therapy for my hand, I can look at your hand doing this, and you say, squeeze the ball, right?
Right.
And this finger doesn't want to squeeze. So we work on it.
Right.
We don't get that chance with our brains. We can't see it. And so I think it's very important to just, draw it out. And take ownership.
Right.
And one of the things I always talk about, even when my own trauma resurfaces, is, my brain's not working. And then I can physiologically, and it takes it all out of my character or fear or any of that. So probably weren't expecting that, but that's some of the work that I do around trauma. And, I've had to adapt like everyone to the new world of online, which is both fantastic because it's more affordable for everybody. It can reach farther away.
Yes.
In trauma dialogue, it is nice if people can be away and have some privacy and some quietness. So that's the other challenge in the Zoom world when it comes to healing modalities. Sometimes I've said, look, if you can't get away for the weekend or the day or the evening, depends, set up your bathroom, sit in your bathtub, put some blankets in there, find a space where you really can go and just, because I have no control over what will cause your own trauma to snap, trigger, whatever word you want to use. So you want to give yourself some space while you're learning some skills. So it's the alternative. Women have, especially during the pandemic, they were doing all the extras and their kids were at home. So there's, there's that constant tug of war. So,
So we're going to have to end it there because we're out of time, but thank you so much. There was a lot to hear and to take in. There's a lot of information you have. To the audience, I hope you found it as fascinating as I did. You learn, this is what the interview is for me about. You learn something that you didn't know before. And that's the beauty of it. So thank you, Mary, very much. And thank you.
Well,
everyone.
thank you, Nancy. And thank you for inviting me and talking about my book, which opens that doors to talking about where some of my other events in my life journey.
Right. So just stay there for a second, Mary, while I say goodbye to everybody.
Okay.
And, be safe and kind and all of those wonderful things. And peace out, everyone.
A sense of community, Chilliwack's a place to be. A sense of community where you're free. Rolling through the mountains, rolling through the valley, rolling through paradise with me. It's multicultural, you're sure to see it all. Chilliwack's the place to be, you'll see. Come party in the park, go dancing after dark. Chilliwack's the place to be, you'll see.